types of questions that you could be asked about in the Leaving Cert. Think about things to do with themes like corruption or loyalty and betrayal or deception, appearance versus reality. Think about the dramatic structure of the play and what makes the opening interesting and engaging and the conclusion, surprising and memorable. Think about the portrayal of different aspects of human nature in the play, in particular, our capacity for selfish, cruel, Machiavellian ambition. Think about all those different things. And who are we thinking about? We're thinking about this guy on the screen here, Edmund. So this is our Edmund mind map. If you want to track this along in your paper 2 textbook, go to page 105 and there you'll see the Edmund mind map. And as usual, in the middle of the page, there's a quote, and then you start in the bottom left-hand corner where the first arrow leads to the box with the thicker black line, and you work your way around. I'm presenting it here to you in a slightly different way, as you know, if you've watched other of these videos, because it's easier for you to see it on the screen in this format. But the information on the map matches exactly the information in this format. So let's look at that quote that I decided. I always try to pick a quote that sums up a character's role in the play. And here's the quote I picked to sum up Edmund. It's spoken in the final scene of the play, in Act 5, Scene 3, when Edmund is ordering a regicide. A regicide is the murder of a king, and a murder of a king is no ordinary crime. It's the murder of God's anointed. It's a crime against God, against the person of the king, and against the nation itself. Edmund is about to order a terrible, terrible act. But when he explains his motives, he says this to the agent who he is employing to carry out his desires. He says, "Know thou this, that men are as the time is. To be tender-minded does not become a sword." To be tender-minded does not become a sword. Men are as the time is. This is Edmund. Edmund is a man who sees the world as a corrupt place. And to be honest, I don't blame him. He, from the moment he was born, has suffered injustice. He believes the world to be an unjust place. Where I do blame him is his decision to reject all morality, all sense of what is right and proper in terms of our behaviour, to reject all sense of decency in order to achieve his goals. For Edmund, nothing is off limits, including the killing of a king. He will not be tender-minded because he has to be the sword. He has to be sharp. He has to be cruel in order to achieve his goals. So let's have a look through the different stages of Edmund's development as a character in the play. The very basics. He is the illegitimate son of the Earl of Gloucester. So his mum and dad were not married when he was conceived, and that means that while the Earl of Gloucester does recognise him as his son, he's not recognised at the beginning of the play as having any legal rights to his father's estate or any legal rights to be recognised as a member of his father's family. He's a year younger than his brother Edgar. We're told that in the opening lines of the play. And he is referred to in those opening lines as a whore son. We'll see the full quote in a moment. A whore son. What a way to describe your own son. Here we have Gloucester doing what Gloucester does at the start of the play and being insensitive and being cruel and not thinking about the impact that his words have on people like Edmund, his own son, who are inside his power, who are at his mercy. So when Gloucester is tortured later on in the play, and when Edmund leaves him to be tortured and shows no compassion towards his father, we can understand why Edmund has developed such a bitter and unforgiving attitude to the world. He is a very complex character. He's corrupt. He is a villain, which means a bad guy. But he is always right up until the end of the play, just right up until the last moments for me, and you're allowed to have your own opinions. For me, he's always a deeply sympathetic human being. There's so much about him that makes me like him, while at the same time, there's so much about him that makes me fear and loathe the type of human being he represents. Very, very interesting. We know he's humiliated in Act 1, Scene 1. So the parallels between Lear and Gloucester, we talked about this in many videos. The parallels are there from the outset. They humiliate their children. The exact quote that Gloucester speaks when talking about Edmund to Kent is, "There was good sport at his making, and a whore son must be acknowledged." So here's Gloucester boasting about the quality of the sex that he had with Edmund's mother. Here's Gloucester calling Edmund's mother a whore, which in the world of the play is a person of no value, a person who has debased and demeaned herself beyond any possibility of redemption. So Edmund is a whore son, tainted by the stigma of his birth. And yet Gloucester says, look, I have to acknowledge him as mine, but I'm not going, he has no rights. Edmund in that first scene keeps his head down, keeps quiet, doesn't react to his father's cruelty. And we see a pattern of behaviour emerge in his character as the play progresses, where we learn his true thoughts through soliloquy. When we think about Edmund and we listen to his soliloquies, we learn so much about his character, not the least of which from the first soliloquy in Act 1, Scene 2, which establishes him as duplicitous, eloquent, and fascinating. Now remember, that word duplicitous means two-faced, somebody who is scheming, who hides the truth of their attitudes and beliefs, and who is fundamentally dangerous. The fact that we can at the same time recognize his latent or his apparent corruption and his malevolent intentions. Malevolent means wicked intentions. But at the same time, admire his language and the force and the beauty and the eloquence of his language. This is what Shakespeare is doing to us with Edmund. He's given us a bad guy, but a bad guy who, despite ourselves, we can admire for a variety of reasons. The speech begins with, "Wherefore should I stand in the plague of custom, and permit the curiosity of nations to deprive me, for that I am some 12 or 14 moonshines lag of a brother? Why bastard? Wherefore base, when my dimensions are as well compact as honest madam's issue?" It's a fantastic piece of writing by Shakespeare, and it's a fantastic introduction to Edmund's character. Look at the use of imagery. The plague of custom. Custom is the traditional treatment of children who are born out of wedlock. And children who are born out of wedlock are rejected by society. They are ostracized by society. They are never entitled to any rights, property rights, any kind of legal rights. Edmund calls that a plague. Now, a plague is something which will destroy your life. It's a disease. And if you thought there was a possibility that you could escape infection from that disease, wouldn't you do everything you could to get away from it? Well, that's Edmund. Edmund is aware of the fact that if he sits back and allows himself to be treated the way the word he uses is bastard children are treated, well, then he has no hope and no future. And he says it's not fair because I have a brother who I am as good as. My dimensions are as well compact as my brother. I'm as good as him. I'm as bright as him. I'm as strong as him. I have all of the qualities he has. Why does he get everything and I get nothing? And if you look at that speech, you can see question mark, question mark, question mark. The three rhetorical questions are deliberately employed by Shakespeare to build up a sense of momentum, to build up a sense of force behind Edmund's words. When he refers to honest madam, he's talking about Gloucester's wife. Gloucester's wife is honest because when she had sex and conceived and gave birth to her son Edgar, unlike Edmund's mother, she was married and is therefore respectable and therefore honest. He is an ambitious man, and he's also Machiavellian. Now, what does that word mean? Well, it means that for Edmund, the ends justify the means. That no matter what he has to do to get what he wants, he will do it. He will commit any crime, break any law, legal or moral, to achieve his goals. And that is made very evident in the same soliloquy when he says that he will destroy his brother. Legitimate Edgar, I must have your land. Edmund the base shall top the legitimate. I grow, I prosper. Great use of juxtaposition by Shakespeare there to capture Edmund's current situation and his desire for change, his belief that he can, through his own wit, his own ruthless pursuit of ambition, change his destiny. He will top his brother. In other words, he will rise to the top and knock his brother out of his position as heir. This proves that he is immoral. This proves that he is not somebody who is willing to be limited by principles or by traditional rules. If it means destroying his brother's life to achieve his goals, he will do that without hesitation. We know in Act 1, Scene 2, he forges a letter. And we know when he forges that letter, he takes advantage of his father's impetuosity, his father's rashness, his father's tendency to act without thinking. And Edmund's duplicity is evident in the quote, "It is a letter from my brother that I have not o'erread, and for so much as I have perused, I find it not fit for your o'erlooking." Really interesting, really memorable quote, and a great example of Shakespeare's use of dramatic irony in the play. We know when Edmund speaks those words that he's lying. We know that Edgar, his brother, did not write the letter. We know that Edmund is manipulating his father. But Gloucester doesn't know any of that. And that creates tension. And don't forget as well, when we see Edmund describing what he's going to do and then executing perfectly his plan, while what he's doing is wrong and while we are appalled by that, he's also, his intelligence and his wit and his intuition, his ability to read human nature, they are things which we admire. And that's what makes him fascinating. He is not a one-dimensional cardboard cutout villain. He is a man of substance, even if he is a man also of corruption. When his scheme succeeds, when he sets his father off on this spiral of paranoia, which will result in the schism between Edgar and Gloucester, and Edmund being able to step in to the position of heir, Edmund is delighted with himself. And again, in that first scene where he speaks in Act 1, Scene 2, there's a second brilliant soliloquy in which he speaks, I think, some of the best lines in the play. He is boastful and self-congratulatory. He's pleased with himself when he says, "A credulous father and a brother noble whose nature is so far from doing harms that he suspects none, on whose foolish honesty my practices ride easy." Easy. He is thrilled with himself. He said, "This was too easy. My father is an idiot. He's credulous." That means he believes anything. He understands his father, and therefore he's able to manipulate him. So the success of his scheme brings him great pleasure. What's really interesting is how he dismisses his brother by calling him an honest fool. He dismisses his foolish honesty. Think about those two words. It's a brilliant example of what Shakespeare might refer to as an oxymoron. Maybe he wouldn't, but certainly as students of the play, we should refer to him as an oxymoron. We think of honesty as a strength, as we are taught that honesty is good, honesty is something to admire. We don't think of honesty as being foolish. But Edmund, being corrupt, seeing the world as a corrupt place, sees Edgar's trusting nature as a weakness which he will exploit. And that's a great quote for you to learn, that'll allow you to talk about his corruption, but also his intelligence, and also why sometimes watching him is entertaining, because it's funny seeing a man so blatantly boast about the success of the schemes he has put into place to destroy his own brother and his father. This delight that he takes from his misdeeds, this sense of how much he enjoys the game, is again one of the things that makes the character so interesting, and recurs in Act 2 when he takes the chance to exploit the unexpected arrival of Cornwall and Regan at Gloucester's castle. Cornwall and Regan are coming to Gloucester's castle to avoid Lear, but Edmund doesn't know that. He has a conversation with Curran, and Curran tells him Cornwall and Regan are on the way. And Edmund is absolutely delighted with this. And in another little aside, so again, dramatic irony, so we know what's going on, he says, the Duke be here tonight, the better best. This is the bit that you love, that you learn, that this weaves itself perforce into my business. Look at those, alliterative B's and that exclamation mark. There's a sense that he's really thrilled. He doesn't know that Cornwall is coming because he's avoiding Lear. All he knows is that Cornwall is a scary bastard. Cornwall has a reputation for being a very, very, very nasty man. So if Edmund can use or weave this arrival into his plan, into his business, if he can exploit the news of Cornwall and Regan's arrival in order to manipulate his brother and get him to run away and look guilty, he's going to do that. And of course, that highlights one of the really key words we use about Edmund. He is highly opportunistic. He sees his opportunity and he doesn't hesitate. He takes it. He's a man of action. He is also successful. We know, if you've watched the videos on the act and scene summaries, that Edmund's plan is to rise up out of the baseness of his birth to as high as he can. And we know that there are 3 moments of triumph associated with him in the play. And the first one occurs in Act 2, when Gloucester, believing his son Edgar is a traitor as a result of his son Edmund's schemes, rewards Edmund with the words, "Loyal and natural boy, I'll work the means to make thee capable." Very, very, very important. A lovely piece of irony, dramatic irony, but just irony itself, calling him loyal and natural when there's nothing loyal about him, and his attitude towards his father and his brother certainly goes against God's law, so therefore he's unnatural. But Gloucester's perfectly unaware, unwittingly rewarding a man who's out to destroy him. We know that when Edmund talks of his brother and of his ambition, he demonstrates his intelligence and his determination. But that empathy that we have with him, that sense of, yeah, this is a guy, has the odds against him. He's working hard. He's going to achieve what he can achieve. That begrudging admiration that we as a 21st century audience might have for that person who manages to survive and prosper despite disadvantage, that does dissipate as his immorality and depravity become more apparent as the play progresses. In other words, to dissipate is to reduce or to be diluted. And the more we see of Edmund, the more bad things he does, the less likely that we're going to sit and say, yeah, we like this guy, or we're willing to forgive him. A great example of that is when he betrays his father in Act 3. He says, when his father tells him that he's going to help the king, he says, again in an aside, "This courtesy forbid thee, shall the Duke instantly know. The younger rise while the old doth fall." And that sense of relish, that sense of enjoyment that he expresses from the idea that he's going to be able to betray his father, That is shocking. Even though we know what he's like, it is shocking. There's no doubt, there's no qualm, Qualm. I'll put that one in the knowledge checks. There's no sense of hesitation, of a dilemma. Well, if I tell on my father, Cornwall is a psycho, he might really hurt my father. He doesn't care. The Duke shall instantly know that Gloucester has betrayed him. And of course, when Gloucester tells Edmund, Edmund is feigning loyalty, feigning his sense of duty and to his father. And again, dramatic irony heightens the tension in the scene, because we can see Gloucester walking into the trap and he's not able to, we're not able to warn him. This betrayal of his father, of course, leads to a second moment of triumph. So moment of triumph number one is when he's made his father's heir. Loyal and natural boy, I'll work the means to make thee capable. The second moment of triumph occurs when he betrays his father to Cornwall and is told, true or false, it has made thee Earl of Gloucester. So he's gone from the plague of custom and down, why brand they me with bastardy, with baseness. He's gone from that to a title of one of the great earldoms of the kingdom, a hugely successful man whose ruthless Machiavellian tactics are successful. We know that as a result of his betrayal of his father, that Gloucester is going to be arrested and tortured. One of the most shocking things for me, and I'm allowed to have my opinion and you're allowed to have yours, this is just designed to get you thinking. One of the most shocking things that Edmund does involves, it's actually something he doesn't do. It's something that he sidles out of, that he refuses to get involved in. And that is in Act 3, Scene 7, when his father's arrested. And he's told by Cornwall, Goneril has to go to Albany and get the army ready. You go with her, because you don't want to be here to see what happens to your dad. He says, Edmund, keep you our sister company. The revenges we are bound to take upon your traitorous father are not fit for your beholding. And what Cornwall is saying there is, Edmund, you get out of here, because I'm going to really torture your father. I'm going to make him suffer for what he's done. And what does Edmund do there? Well, as I said, it's a sin of omission. He does nothing. And in fact, he doesn't even speak. He doesn't attempt in any way to mitigate his father's fate. He doesn't attempt in any way to plead for some sort of mercy for Gloucester, because after all, what Gloucester has done is simply help the king. But Edmund understands that Cornwall has the power, and Edmund will not challenge Cornwall in any way, because challenging Cornwall would be a selfless act, and Edmund is fundamentally selfish. And that is the crucial difference between Edmund and his brother Edgar. Edgar will put himself in danger to try to help others. Edmund will do nothing that doesn't involve his own self-interest. When he, in Act 5, Scene 1, tells us that he has seduced both Goneril and Regan, and when he laughs at their devotion to him and comments on his decision about whether or not he will marry one of them or none of them, we're not surprised. This is a game he's played all the way through the play. He looks at people who have power and he flatters them so that to make them vulnerable, and then he abandons them. He did that to Edgar. He did it to Gloucester. He tried doing it to Cornwall, but he succeeded with Cornwall. Cornwall died. He does it with Regan, and he does it as well, of course, with Goneril. The only character who he tries it on with, and it's not successful, is Albany. To both these sisters have I sworn my love. Which of them shall I take? Both, one, or neither? Again, 3 rhetorical questions in that speech. His immorality, his depravity, his willingness to destroy people's lives, to take advantage of trust and love in order to further his own goals. These are qualities in him which are disturbing and represent the worst of us. When we come to the end of Act 5, Scene 1, we get another soliloquy from Edmund, which is really quite shocking. We are told by Albany that he intends to be generous towards Lear and Cordelia if he wins the battle, that he intends to give them merciful terms because he feels sympathetic towards Lear and Cordelia. But Edmund's ambition for power is insatiable. Edmund is ruthless and determined. So when he thinks about what's going to happen after the battle, he makes a decision. Let's have a look at the speech that ends Act 5, Scene 1. Edmund, talking of Albany, says, "We'll see his countenance for the battle." That should be use. Apologies, that's my mistake. Use his countenance for the battle. In other words, Albany's a soldier, a general. I need him to beat the French, so I'll use him. And then when the battle's over, I will devise his speedy taking off. So he's going to have Albany killed. He's ruthless. And then he tells us, and remember I told you at the very beginning of this video that Edmund is crucial to the way the play ends in an interesting way, in a memorable way. He tells us he's going to kill Lear and Cordelia. As for the mercy which he intends to Lear and to Cordelia, the battle done and day within our power shall never see his pardon. And then he says, and lads, there's 5 or 6 quotes that are really important. You'll see them in the quotes test at the end of this video and the knowledge checks. But this is one of the best quotes in the play, and it sums Edmund up. He says, "My state stands on me to defend, not to debate." And I remember when I did the video for this scene, I mentioned Derek Mahon's poem, As It Should Be. I mentioned the speaker in that poem rejecting idle talk, as he called it, of the moon in the Yellow River, which meant rejecting discussion of morality, of what is right and what is wrong and what is acceptable behaviour. And here we have Edmund saying the same thing. I'm not going to debate rights or wrong about killing a king or killing Cordelia, even though I know she is the personification of all that is good in humanity. She's in my way. He's in my way. My state stands on me to defend, not to debate. They're going to go. And in that sense, Edmund is such a true depiction of, unfortunately, a very dominant streak in human nature. There are many of us who will encounter people who will be ruthless like Edmund in our lives. All we have to do is look at the pages of history. All we have to do is look at the plays that we read, the movies that we watch, the stories that we tell, to see characters like this. And characters like this don't exist because they are fantastical. They exist because they reflect a fundamental truth in human nature, how selfish we really can be when ambition takes hold. So, we come back to the beginning. When he orders his agent to kill Lear and Cordelia, he says, "Know thou this, to be tender-minded does not become a sword." A crucial quote. And he gets to his third moment of triumph in Act 5, Scene 3, when Regan announces that she is going to marry him and give him her royal authority. In other words, make him a king. She announces, "General, take down my soldiers, prisoners, patrimony. Dispose of them of me. The walls are thine. Witness the world that I create thee here, my Lord and Master." I create thee here, my Lord and Master. Patrimony is what you receive from your father, Pater. Her patrimony is her royal authority that Lear gave to her following the abdication. She is handing him her power. He has reached the pinnacle, the apex of the power structure and hierarchy. He announced his decision at the start of the play to go from the base to the top. He's done it, but he's done it in a way which is utterly reprehensible, immoral, and ignoble, which means the opposite of noble. We think there's a moment where we go, "Oh my God, is Shakespeare going to let Edmund be the winner here? Is this what's going to happen? Is this going to be a play about how evil prospers?" But no. Of course, his success is short-lived. We know his brother Edgar captured the correspondence between Edmund and Goneril, which presented evidence of a plot to kill Albany. and Goneril and Edmund are arrested by Albany in Act 5, Scene 3, with the words, "Edmund, I arrest thee on capital treason, which means punishable by death, and in thy arrest, this gilded serpent." When Edmund is challenged at the end by his brother, he is told he is a most toad-spotted traitor. And there's a wonderful eloquence to Edgar's speech in which he condemns his brother as false to thy gods, thy brother, and that shall be THY, father. And these words spoken by Edgar are important and appropriate because he was Edmund's first victim. So the idea that he is the arbiter of justice, it is he who fights Edmund, who wounds Edmund fatally, it is he who restores order, having had order disrupted by his brother's, Edmund's, Machiavellian scheming. So Edmund, while there is this last minute plea to save Lear and Cordelia, I don't think it mitigates at all his heinous immoral behaviour. I think he is emblematic of humanity's capacity for corruption. And in the end, he's also a symbol of justice. So these are all important themes that we could write about if we were talking about the play and why it has a modern appeal. So that is Edmund, our central villain of the play. He is a fascinating depiction of humanity's capacity for greed or avarice, for our duplicity. He is central to what makes the play highly entertaining, highly dramatic, filled with tension and suspense. He is one of the key characters that you should prep before you go into this exam next June.